Going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Sulich, president of Speak Up Newport. Welcome back. It's been 18 months since we've had a live program for Speak Up Newport. It's hard to believe, but yeah, 18 months, and we've done, I think, 19 programs via Zoom since that time. We've canceled one mayor's dinner, had a mayor's summer reception, so we've tried to keep Speak Up Newport going during the pandemic, and hope those of you that participated have enjoyed all of our programs over the last 18 months. And here we are, back live again. Have the bungalow again, giving us good food. Appreciate that. Thanks to Jim Walker for that. Tonight, one other thing I wanted to mention is we're also on Zoom tonight. So we had 75 registrants for Zoom, and I can see them on my iPad over there. Actually, I can see myself. So we got people participating by Zoom this evening, so that's pretty good too. Our program tonight is a presentation and update on the harbor by our new Harbormaster Paul Blank, and our moderator this evening is Joe Stapleton, and Joe's going to introduce Paul. So Joe, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ed. It's incredible to see everybody after 18 months, and welcome back. So as the membership chair of Speak Up Newport, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that my favorite thing about our Harbormaster Paul Blank is he's a long-time member of Speak Up Newport. So thank you, Paul, for your continued support. I first met Paul when I was serving on the Harbor Commission back in 2012, and I can tell everyone in this room that Paul was born for this role. Maybe outside of Seymour Beak, but I would challenge you, Seymour. Paul might know as much about the harbor as you do, but we're so lucky to have him here. And he's frequently seen racing large and small sailboats here in Newport Harbor and across Southern California. Paul has been part of the harbor community since he completed the City of Newport Beach Recreation Department sailing lessons back in 1975. So the early introduction to sailing has led to a lifetime passion for boating. Paul served as an IT executive for several consumer product brands. He also owned the well-regarded and successful Casa Laguna Inn and Spa in Laguna Beach. So Paul earned his BA in psychology with an emphasis in chemistry from UCLA, which seems like a good fit for Harbormaster. Paul has served in the City of Newport Beach as a harbor commissioner since 2012. He served on the Special Events Advisory Committee for a year before that. He was also recently elected to serve on the board of the Catalina Island Conservancy. So Paul has a long list of community-serving things that took him into public life now here as a Harbormaster for Newport. So as a harbor commissioner, Paul served as chair for 2 years and led the ad hoc committee reviewing paddleboard safety in the harbor. Additionally, he led the ad hoc committee, which developed recommendations on existing and potentially new public piers that we all love and enjoy. He has also he's been a driving force behind the recent public outreach efforts for the commission and led efforts to develop long-term vision of the harbor. One of my favorite things I saw on Paul's application for Harbor Commission, he wrote, "I have a genuine interest in maintaining and sustaining the harbor as a center of culture for Newport Beach. Not unlike Sydney, Australia, a city in which I have also been privileged to live and work, our harbor is inextricably woven into what makes Newport the special place that it is." So I thought that was a great way to describe the harbor. So Paul became our newest City of Newport Beach Harbor Master earlier this year in May, so he's only been on the job for a few months, and you'll see how much he's been able to accomplish already. So his focus is on making harbor the cleanest, safest, and most well-enjoyed harbor it can be. In 2022, so next year, Paul is going to serve as a centennial Commodore of the Balboa Yacht Club, so he's going to have his hands full with that. So please join me as we give a warm Speak Up Newport welcome to Harbormaster Paul Blank.
Thank you and good evening. I am Paul Blank. I am your Harbormaster, and it is a pleasure to be with you. It is a pleasure to be back at Speak Up Newport. Believe it or not, I'm going to give you a brief history of the Harbor Department in just a moment, but first I want to show you this photograph. That's me. In 2015, before there was a Harbor Department. And I was a harbor commissioner. That's my colleague, Chris Miller, who was then the harbor resources manager, standing behind me as I was giving a harbor update to Speak Up Newport in, I think, June of 2015. the existence of a harbor department was not on anyone's radar, and it was certainly not on my radar to become the harbor master. But here I am. Funny how things happen. So, let's see if I can go back. And I really did used to be a technology executive, so I should be able to run this presentation. Brief history of the Harbor Department. In July 2017, the city assumed responsibility for mooring management from the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department, realizing a $330,000 annual savings. Work that had been contracted to the Sheriff's Department came to the city of Newport Beach, and we've been managing it ever since. Harbor Operations Division was initially part of the Public Works Department, where Chris Miller, my colleague there that you saw, still works today and handles things that are structural and construction related on the water. The Harbor Department is responsible for berthing and all the activities that go on the water, but construction and structures over the water remains with Public Works. In 2018, the Harbor Operations Division was transferred to the City Manager's Office, no longer part of Public Works. And then in July of 2018, the commensurate with the beginning of that fiscal year, the City Council created the standalone Harbor Department, in which I now work. And in 2020, Title 17, the municipal code that governs the harbor and all the things that happen in it, was updated to reflect the new arrangement. So that's a brief history of 5 years of the Harbor Department and why it's here. Okay, that was me in 2015. Quick overview of the harbor. It covers 880 acres of water. That's roughly the size of Central Park. It's actually a little bit bigger than Central Park. There are 800 offshore moorings that we took responsibility for managing when we transferred that responsibility out of the Harbor Department, out of the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department. There are 400 onshore moorings, and those onshore moorings mean one end of that mooring is attached to land. They're typically at the street ends on Balboa Peninsula or around Balboa Island on several of the beaches. There are some elsewhere in the harbor as well. I am responsible for a 23-slip marina at Marina Park, mostly visitor serving. There is also a 172-slip marina at Balboa Yacht Basin near Basin Marine that the city owns and is professionally managed by a management group that reports to me. I don't have much in the way of daily responsibility for Balboa Yacht Basin, but I do get there once a week, and I do interface with the leadership team over there. We get them new flags. We there's all manner of issues that we coordinate on. The harbor, according to a recent study conducted by the Harbor Commission, attracts 7.1 million visitors per year. The beaches, about 10 million. The harbor, about 7.1 million visitors, and that's 1.2 million that just come to watch the boat. Another 1.2 that ride Seymour's Ferry. If you come and eat in a restaurant, you are included in that number. It's a big asset. It's a big amenity here in the harbor. That results in about 300, and this is done by a Beacon study in 2018, $300 million in direct economic impact. The harbor, if in the absence of the harbor, that $300 million of direct fiscal or financial impact would not exist. People come to the harbor, they go on a whale watching tour, they rent a boat from a councilman, they go on a fishing excursion, they eat in a restaurant. That's $300 million worth of direct financial impact to the surrounding community. There's an additional $1 billion in indirect. So if a family of four comes from Yorba Linda to go on a whale watching tour, the tickets that they buy for that whale watching tour are direct economic impact to the city of Newport Beach. When they leave the city and buy a quart of milk and maybe stop at a restaurant on their way out of town, that is included in the additional $1 billion of economic impact, the indirect economic impact. Lastly, the city of Newport Beach are tasked with the responsibility and stewardship for Newport Harbor, and that was based on the Beacon Bay Bill, which was initially signed in 1919 and then revised in 1978. That is the State Lands Commission, California State Lands Commission, granted responsibility or deeded responsibility for safe navigation in Newport Harbor to the city of Newport Beach by that bill. Just a quick introduction to your Harbor Commission. These people are all volunteers. I was one of them not too long ago, and Joe Stapleton was actually one of them not too long ago. These are your current serving Harbor Commissioners. Chair Kenny is in the audience. I don't see any of the other commissioners. If there's another commissioner in the room, please identify yourself. Okay, great. I can talk about them. They are an advisory and appellate body advising the City Council on highest and best use of the harbor. They are heavily focused on objectives related to additional dredging in the harbor. That's probably their number one objective. Every scoop we take out of the bay is cleaner, safer water for everyone to enjoy in the harbor, and that's their primary objective. They do oversee harbor operations. I have requests frequently from the harbor commissioners asking for a survey of that or information on this, especially as it relates to harbor utilization. They are deeply entrenched in ensuring the viability of the harbor and sustainability of the harbor for many, many, many generations and many centuries to come. They are responsible for guiding the City Council on how to make capital expenditures and therefore improve the infrastructure. And then they are an outreach body to stakeholders not unlike yourselves. Okay, so the Harbor Department, that's me, the Harbor Master. The Harbor Department's mission since May 5th of this year is to keep the harbor clean, safe, and well enjoyed by everybody. That is really our marching orders. That's what we're here to do. And we do that in favor of the residents first, the businesses second, and visitors last. And that is concurrent with the way the general plan for the City of Newport Beach is written. The preamble to the general plan of the City of Newport Beach, many people in this room know well, is when conflict arises and decisions have to be made in those decisions, the decision is made in favor of the residents first in the City of Newport Beach, then the businesses in Newport Beach, and lastly the visitors to it. Thankfully, in our daily life, mostly we get to make decisions without conflict, and it's an easy putt. But when conflict arises between the best interests of this constituency or that constituency, we make decisions in this order or priority. And here's one of the ways in which we keep the harbor clean. This is some graffiti that was tagged onto a height marker on the Lido Isle Bridge. These height markers exist on all the bridges, so mariners know how to transit safely under the bridges in most cases. Anyway, some graffiti showed up. Ordinarily, that would be a municipal services thing to tackle, but it's only accessible from the water. So yours truly went out there and scraped the graffiti off that bridge marker that day. There was one small challenge. By the time the request had come to me and it was necessary that somebody go out there, we have a great team at the Harbor Department, but it just so happened to be I was sitting there and had the time to go do it, so I did it. I could not reach the bottom of this particular height marker because the tide had risen since the tagging had occurred. So we sent a second worker out the next day at low tide to get the bottom markings off. And I will tell you that our good folks in the Municipal Operations Division introduced me to this magic elixir, which is the fantastic graffiti removal. If you ever have to do graffiti removal, I strongly endorse this product. We tried 4 different products. This was by far the best. Long story short, the graffiti was removed the next day. All right, what else do we do to keep the Harbor Department clean? Today is Thursday. So Tuesday, I went out with representatives of the water quality team, and we redeployed a trash skimmer that had lived in the water. I think this one had lived at Basin Marine. There was another one living at the Rhine Channel, but both were dedeployed and had been stored in a municipal yard at Balboa Yacht Basin for some time. We got permission to redeploy that. We got permission to redeploy both of them this week at the Balboa Bay Club. So thank you very much to our good friends at the Balboa Bay Club. We lifted those out with some help from the utilities department, put them back on the water, and then you see in the right-hand photograph me towing one of those 2 trash skimmers up the bay backwards because the boat tracks much better, and this thing is submerged and it's huge. It's like the size of a dumpster. So imagine, excuse me, towing a submerged dumpster up the harbor. It's much easier to do so with the propeller in front. So it's now towed back to the Balboa Bay Club and deployed with one of its buddies. Here are the services that the Harbor Department is currently tasked with providing to all of you constituents on the bay or near the bay. We do the mooring management that we took over from the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department. We are also responsible for enforcing the municipal code, Title 17. We do harbor events permitting. Anybody wants to have a special event on the harbor, permit application is sent to my office. We review it. There's a fee associated with it, and generally we grant them. All sorts of reasons why you might have harbor events permitted, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail in a bit. We are also responsible for safety and rescue operations on the harbor. I'll give you a couple examples of that. We are responsible for the hospitality at Marina Park and the associated sub-permit moorings. We do pump-out equipment maintenance and upgrades. In fact, we were inspected by Heal the Bay Tuesday as well, and we have not yet seen our grade, but for all the 5 pump-out stations that we maintain in the harbor, we expect they got sparkling grades on Tuesday. I saw George Hilkema here. I don't know if he's still in the room, but George Hilkema has come up with this brilliant design for an improvement to our pump-out stations, which we deployed very early this year, and it's taking the metal and heavy objects out of the pump-out equipment that is supposed to only be used for sanitation systems, but are frequently misused by people putting the suction hose in the bilge. When they put the suction hose in the bilge, typically metal equipment or metal parts, very sharp objects can be consumed by the vacuum, and it ruins the pump and it ruins the hoses. So George Hilkema has come up with this absolutely brilliant piece of engineering that we've attached to our pump outs to filter out that inappropriate material. Okay, what else are we responsible for? We are responsible for impounds and auctions of wayward boats or boats that have been surrendered. And lastly, we're responsible for public relations and concierge service. That's me here talking to you folks. Okay, so a little more detail in mooring management services. What you see up there on the top is an actual mooring permit. That's somebody's permission to use the water and deploy all the equipment associated with a mooring in Newport Harbor. We are currently undergoing a wholesale audit of all 1,200, 1,100 mooring permits, and that is a huge Herculean effort. We inherited about 60 years worth of records from the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department. We did what we could as quickly as we could in terms of just getting people to pay their bills regularly. We are now into the process of actually assuring that the title on the permit matches the title to the boat that's on the mooring, and that matches the person who's actually paying the bill. And you would be surprised that over the course of 60 years, the transition from who actually titled the permit originally might not be still with us, although one of their heirs or one of their associates continues to pay the bill. So big effort to go through that audit. We do the ongoing permit maintenance, which includes overhauls. Every 2 years, these moorings have to be overhauled, and we just need to keep a clean record of that. Also, we check vessel registration and insurance. Vessels are not allowed to be on any of the moorings unless they are properly registered with the U.S. Coast Guard, the California DMV, or some other authority that is recognized by the city of Newport Beach, and all vessels must be insured. Oh, thank you very much. Do I sound that bad? We also process all the mooring transfers. So the permits for these moorings are held in the name of a trust or held in the name of a person. If that person no longer needs the mooring, that permit can be transferred from one person or one trust to another, and we handle those transfers. There is a fee for it. We also maintain the liveaboard program. There's 51 liveaboard permits for all those moorings, and they are currently all being utilized. There is a wait list for additional mooring liveaboard permits. It's very popular to be living on your boat today. It's a great view, very economical. Just in the last year, we have extended that to commercial marinas. So there is now a liveaboard permit program for people who want to live on their boats in commercial marinas. Most of the commercial marina operators don't want liveaboards in their commercial marinas, but there's one that does. So there's a permit for one liveaboard currently in a commercial marina. Lastly, second to last, mooring sub-permitting. So if you have a mooring permit in the city of Newport Beach and you have all the documentation, insurance, and registration, but you don't have a vessel today and you leave your mooring vacant for 30 days, the city can come in and sub-permit it to a visiting boater or somebody else who wants to make use of it. If you leave your mooring vacant for 30 days, we will rent it to somebody else. And the requirements for that include coming to the city of Newport Beach Marina at Marina Park, having your vessel inspected, having the sanitation system die-tabbed, and then we will assign you to the appropriate mooring. And we do that on a 2-week by 2-week by 2-week basis. It's been very popular, and there's a lot of folks currently making use of that. Just this year, we started doing that for onshore moorings. And again, the onshore moorings are those that are connected to a seawall or a bulkhead on the edge of the harbor, typically at a street end on Balboa Peninsula or at one of the beaches around Balboa Island. Those have become surprisingly popular this year. They are limited to vessels of 18 feet or less. But just this year, we started doing sub-permits for those. Very very well received and widely received, additional source of revenue for the city. Lastly, incident documentation and resolution. When there's a complaint associated with a vessel on a mooring or pretty much anywhere else in the harbor, we take a request, much as the municipal services does, using the exact same system they use, the Quest system. We track it, we complete it, we mark it as complete, we document it. Okay, on to code enforcement. Title 17, something I know very well. I was on the subcommittee when I was a harbor commissioner that helped do the most recent wholesale revision of Title 17. It was a 2-year process, but resulted in a modern version of the municipal code that governs the harbor. We, the harbor department, are now responsible for enforcing all the stuff that's in there. And there's a top 20 hit list of stuff we look for on a daily basis, but there's a lot of esoterica in there as well. We do issue marine activity permits for those who wish to operate on the harbor in a commercial manner. If you would wish to rent a vessel or provide a fleet of rental vessels for customers that come from near and far, you need a marine activity permit from the harbor department. If you wish to operate a charter on Newport Harbor, you need a marine activity permit from the harbor. You also need a business license here in the city of Newport Beach, and you have to have the appropriate registration, licensing, tax status, all that kind of stuff. And if you're going to do business on the harbor, you need a marine activities permit from us. We're actively pursuing people who are operating on the harbor that we know about, that are advertising for businesses on the harbor and do not have marine activities permits. We've brought a lot of them into compliance in the last 12 months. We have convinced a couple of them to do business elsewhere. We are also responsible for sea lion deterrent and abatement. If there's an issue with the sea lion on a vessel and the vessel owner can't get to it, or the residential pier permittee cannot get to it quickly enough, we do have deterrent mechanisms that we can deploy. We do charge for that. We are currently designing and building and will build out some more effective abatement mechanisms or deterrent mechanisms than the department has enjoyed in the past. We also do DITAB testing. In the upper left-hand picture that you see there, that is Code Enforcement Supervisor Matt Cozyline visiting a boat in the Anchorage. That blue vessel there was just here for the weekend, and Matt climbed aboard after gaining the permission of the owner to put a DITAB in the sanitation system on that vessel. And therefore test its integrity. We are a no-discharge harbor. You may not discharge waste of any kind in our harbor, and we are particularly insistent that your sanitation system have integrity. So we are now doing DITAB testing for the first time ever. It is also a requirement for any sub-permittee, anybody that comes and wants to have a mooring for 2 weeks at a time or stay in the marina, not so much the marina at Marina Park, but if you want to stay on one of our moorings for 2 weeks on just a visiting basis, you have to come to Marina Park, and we will put a DITAB in your holding tank. Speeding and boating safety. We are responsible for the municipal code, which covers a lot of speed. It covers the speed limit in the city of Newport Beach or in Newport Harbor, and as well, safety advice. So, Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department is the law enforcement authority in Newport Harbor. Your harbor department, City of Newport Beach Harbor Department, is the code enforcement. It happens to be that a speed law exists in the California Municipal Code. California Inland Waterways Code. It also exists, a speed limit exists in the City of Newport Beach Municipal Code. Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department deputy may write you a speeding ticket, which is a moving violation, much as a CHP officer would cite you if you were driving too fast on a freeway. That is a moving violation, and that is what they do. My department is given the authority to write administrative citations for violations of the municipal code. So we also write administrative citations for exceeding the speed limit in Newport Harbor, and there can be a financial penalty associated with that. Typically, it's only $100, and we don't write a lot of them. Mostly what we do is education and advisement on speed and wake, but we do have the authority to write speeding tickets, and we've written something on the order of 24 this year. Bridge jumping, same story. We do have the authority to write administrative citations for people jumping off public structures. It is illegal in the city of Newport Beach to jump off any public structure. That includes jumping off a public structure into the water of Newport Harbor. And if we catch you doing that, we will advise you not to. And then if you persist, we will write you an administrative citation. This was particularly helpful at the beginning of the summer before the lifeguard department had staffed up fully to provide their bridge jumping deterrence in mid-June. In late May, we started operations related to bridge jumping deterrence, and as a result of that, we wrote about 15 administrative citations with financial penalties associated with kids and one adult jumping off bridges in Newport Harbor. It was widely well received, especially by the folks around the 38th Street Bridge and Newport Island. So if any of you are from there, you've seen our patrol boats back there a lot more frequently than they used to be. Multiple berthing inspections early in the summer. The code enforcement team went out on a particular mission to eliminate multiple berthing situations. The fire code, the City of Newport Beach Fire Department has in their code that two vessels may not be tied in such a way that that one blocks the other in. In case of a fire, all vessels need to be able to independently disconnect from whatever structure they're tied to and escape that fire. So multiple berthing situations can exist where one boat blocks in another and would prevent its escape in the event of a fire. We did an inspection of all the commercial marinas at the beginning of the summer and found very few violations. We said, this is a situation you'll need to remedy. We'll be back in 30 days to see that you did, and all complied. Lastly, the code enforcement team, the very capable code enforcement team, the very enthusiastic code enforcement team, has been administering the VTIP and SAVE grant programs. These are for abandoned vessels and vessels that are turned in, no longer loved by their owners. They are turned into the City of Newport Beach, and then we have subcontracts with 3 different service providers who will actually remove the vessels from Newport Harbor and appropriately distribute the recyclable portions of those vessels and then eventually destroy them so they cannot come back as derelict vessels in the future. One of those service providers is in the audience this evening. We're very grateful for his efforts. The grant money comes from the State Department of Boating and Waterway. The City of Newport Beach administrates it. We are coming near the end of the current grant, which was $150,000. It expires at the end of September, so September 30th it will expire. We are less than $30,000 away from consuming it all, and we expect that by the end of by the end of the month, we will have consumed all of those funds. Conveniently, the City Council Tuesday night approved the gift of an additional $175,000 for the next 2 years to run the same program. So we are busily out there removing unwanted, unloved, unwell cared for vessels from Newport Harbor through the use of these grants. And they're not all coming from Newport Harbor. One of the requirements in the most recent go-around is that you guys in Newport, clearly you're heavily focused on Newport Harbor, but hey, how about you give some love to the surrounding areas? So we've taken 2 boats, I believe, from Dana Point and 1 from Huntington Harbor, and then several from inland that were on trailers. Harbor events permitting. We do harbor events permitting. You get a special events permit from the Harbor Department if you are going to have a parade in the harbor, if you are going to run a regatta in the harbor, if you are a large vessel and you would like to stay on our west anchorage. Additionally, you would need a special events permit from us if you want to have a raft up, drop a temporary mooring, and all of this is coordinated with the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department as well as the U.S. Coast Guard. Let's talk about raft ups. In the previous slide, I mentioned the fire code, which says there are no multiple berthing situations allowed. All boats need to escape, be capable of escaping whatever they're tied to, whatever their mooring is in the event of a fire. So why do we write permits for raft ups? It's for exactly the same reason. One boat anchored, another boat ties to it. Okay, if there's a fire, either one can get away. But if you want to have 3 or more boats tied together in the anchorage, you need a special events permit from us, a harbor events permit, so that we know you're out there. And in the case of a fire, we can respond accordingly because we know you guys are in this multiple berthing situation. That's the only reason those permits exist. In the upper right-hand corner, you see an actual raft up, a permitted raft up that worked out well. They obeyed all the conditions associated with their permit. It was a wonderful weekend for that whole gang. They had a great stay in Newport Harbor in the anchorage. Right below it is their actual permit. It's just 2 pages. Doesn't require a lot. There's a small fee associated with it, but that's it. In the lower left-hand corner, you see one of the large vessels that was permitted to stay with us in the West Anchorage. We've had more interest in that than ever before. We've had a total of 7 large vessels come for various stays, some of them several stays this past summer. I don't think we've ever had more than 2 in a year before, but this summer we had 7. We still have 1 more permit to go, or 1 more permit that's issued for essentially the month of October, where the vessel Triton is going to come and stay in the West Anchorage. It's been great. All of the captains, all of the yacht managers that have dealt with me have been very appreciative of their stays. They have expressed how easy it is to come in and have an anchorage, and the aesthetics and amenities that are available to their owners and principals when they do come in for a stay has been very, very, very well received. There was one concern expressed early on this summer about one of the vessels potentially conducting commercial operations, commercial charters on the waters of Newport Harbor. We quickly established with that vessel that it was not actually conducting commercial charters. Had they been conducting commercial charters on that vessel, they would have required an additional marine activities permit from us, but they were not conducting commercial charters. It was just the owner and principal that were enjoying the vessel. Here is an example of a raft up that was not in compliance with their harbor events permit, and that eventually led to a response from uniformed Newport Beach Police Department representatives. That was over Labor Day weekend. I personally was out there, had tried to gain compliance from the two permittees that had gone beyond the conditions associated with their permits. They were clearly not interested in listening to me or trying to comply with the conditions of their permit, so we went and invited two uniformed Newport Beach Police Department officers out with us that were thrilled to take a little boat ride over Labor Day weekend. They didn't get much more in the way of compliance than I did, so the result was the permits were revoked then and there, and both of the permittees have received administrative citations with significant fines, $2,000 each. And the chances of them getting another permit from me are pretty slim at this point. Safety and rescue operations. You'll see there in the middle a New York Times article, David Beek featured at the top of it. Both David and I were interviewed for this New York Times article that was published, I think, in early August, maybe late July. And the premise of the article, this big round headline, big screaming headline, booming interest in boating leads to more deaths and accidents. And when the reporter contacted me, she explained the premise of her article, and my immediate response was, whoa, 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 whoa. Newport Harbor is all about clean, safe, and well enjoyed. And while we have seen a significant uptake in activity on the water, it is still a very clean, very safe place to boat. And in fact, Newport was well in front of the paddleboard craze, and in 2013 we established a subcommittee on the commission to promote paddleboard safety in Newport Harbor, and we developed materials. The materials have been well communicated to the rental paddleboard operators, and we really took a leading role in ensuring safety on the waters of Newport Harbor, and, knock on wood, there have been no significant accidents and certainly no deaths as a result of an increase in boating activity on Newport Harbor. So I think that headline is very misleading, but I'm a harbor master. I don't sell newspapers. This journalist obviously had newspapers to sell, and so she chose to write it the way she did. Long story short, she covered a lot of ground all over the U.S. in this article. David's quotes and contributions and my quotes and contributions were really fairly favorable in terms of safety as it relates to being on the water and novice boaters. To that end, there were two very dramatic rescues performed by members of my team. The first one was on July 2nd when Harbor Services worker Jimmy Yoder was alerted to the fact that a novice paddleboarder and his less than 2-year-old daughter had fallen off their paddleboard in front of the ferry. And the ferry operator knew that they were there, but the ferry operator the ferry operator does what the ferry operator does, and his vessel is, shall we say, limited in its capacity to maneuver, etc. Harbor Services worker Yoder sped to the situation, first retrieved this very young girl who was wearing a PFD, but it was not properly fitted for her, and that is very important, properly fitting PFDs. Anyway, he retrieved her from the water, made sure that her lungs were clear and that she was not drowning. There was a big threat that she was drowning. So he brought her on board his vessel, made sure that her lungs were clear, that she was breathing. After that had taken place, then he went and rescued her father, who had also fallen off the paddleboard. They got them all out of the way of the oncoming ferry and then went back to retrieve the board. Harbor Services Yoder then took father, daughter, and rented paddleboard back to the rental company and said, here's your customer, please educate them better. That was July 2nd, right before the big July 4th weekend. And then more recently, September 4th, part of Labor Day weekend, two kayakers had rented kayaks at the Newport Aquatic Center in the upper Newport Bay, come all the way down to the lower Newport Bay, paddled around in lower Newport Bay, had gotten tired on their way back to Newport Aquatic Center, and then been flipped off their kayaks by a passing wake. Unfortunately, one of those two kayakers was disabled from the waist down and very tired and not in great shape, certainly not capable of getting back on his kayak or proceeding on. Code Enforcement Officer Goldfarb and Jackson Halfide, a Harbor Services worker, Jackson Halfide, you might recognize that name. His father is the lifeguard battalion chief, but Jackson works for the Harbor Department. Jackson and Jeff Goldfarb went over there, retrieved both kayakers and both kayaks, and then returned them all safely to Newport Aquatic Center on that day. Very dramatic rescues. We don't typically do big dramatic rescues like that, but those two are poignant, and I felt important to point them out to you. On a daily basis, we are retrieving paddleboarders who have started their journey downwind, gotten very far away from wherever they departed from. Could have been a rental company, could have been their own paddleboard. They turn around and start coming upwind and find themselves struggling against conditions they had not anticipated. Our Harbor Department workers will let them struggle a little bit and then eventually pick them up and return them to where they went. Lastly, in the lower right-hand corner, you see just a small image of a training class that took place about 3 weeks ago. Everybody in the department has been recertified, either attained original certification or was recertified in CPR and basic first aid by one of our team members who is also a fire captain in Kern County. So those were the Recessa Annies, or whatever you call them, that we all had to practice on. Great training. Okay, Marina Park Management and Harbor Hospitality. We do full service slip stays. If you are a boater and want to come stay at Marina Park, it's a fantastic facility. We'll do pump out service for you. It's included in your stay. There's Wi-Fi service that's included in your stay. The electricity, oddly enough, is not included in your stay. So you either have to have a solar system, run your generator, or be willing to pay the $3 or $12, whatever electricity you consume while you're there. But it's a great place. There's fantastic restaurants within walking distance and great scenery on the ocean side at the Newport Pier. Tremendous amenities all around. Marina Park mooring stays, a little more economical way to keep your boat stored for a visit at Marina Park. It just requires that you have your own tender. We do not provide shoreboat service to the moorings. If you're really stranded or there's an emergency, we will, but we are not licensed for that. We are not Coast Guard licensed captains. Most of us are not. We also, as I've mentioned, the offshore sub-permittee stays, so on a 2-week rolling basis, we'll permit you to enjoy a vacant mooring. If you're here for a long-term stay, you're reprovisioning on a trip down the coast, etc. And this summer, what was very popular were these onshore sub-permits, where somebody brought their 15-foot whaler down or their Lido 14 down for the summer, put it on an empty onshore mooring for the summer, and then the summer has ended and maybe they'll take it away. We also do some support for the large vessel stays, including escort service if needed. There's a fee for that. And then lastly, the ship shape program. So for all of our regular mooring permittees, if you have a mooring permit with the City of Newport Beach and you'd like to do some light maintenance and cleaning on your boat, welcoming it to Marina Park Monday through Thursday for 3 hours or less, and get your light maintenance and cleaning done. What you see there is our website, the visitor serving website for the Harbor Department on the left. On the right is the brochure for the Ship Shape program, and then down at the bottom is one of the established harbor layers within the GIS system in the city. We are actually updating and adding a new layer to the GIS mapping tools within the city's GIS system. GIS is Geographic Information System. That includes locations for harbor-adjacent public restrooms, convenience stores, including the fuel docks, and the pump-out stations. So imagine, if you will, you're renting an electric boat from one of the purveyors. Right next to the steering wheel is going to be a QR code. You take your phone and click on the QR code. It will know where you are, because it tracks you, and it will show you where the nearest public restroom is. Public relations and outreach, also some concierge services. The images you see there, the top one is a sign that was suggested by a very well-known harbor constituent more than 5 years ago, and I was very pleased that within my first 60 days of being the harbor master, I was able to get those signs printed and nailed up on the Lido Isle Bridge piles. so that it's clear that manual-powered craft belong in the outer spans, motorized craft belong in the center span. There's also some additional signage on buoys around the harbor now that show how to contact the harbor department via the My Newport Beach app, the VHF channel 19, or our telephone number is on there as well. Lastly, on the left-hand side, you see an image of the My Newport Beach app. There is now a section in the My Newport Beach app for the harbor and harbor-related services, and that includes, just like you would make a municipal service request for graffiti in in the sculpture garden here, or a traffic light that was out, the exact same way you do that for any of those upland services through the My Newport Beach app, you will be able to make a request of harbor services through the My Newport Beach app through this section. Oh, and lastly, trash and debris removal. And I have a statistic about this a little bit later. When our patrol boats are out patrolling the harbor, in addition to all of the other things that they're looking for, including mooring checks and boats that aren't supposed to be there and safety and all that kind of stuff, they have pool skimmers and trash bins. And if there is debris in the water, they will take their pool skimmer, they will skip it up and deposit it in the trash bin. The trash bins are emptied at the end of the day. And I don't know what the exact number is, but it's something like 500 bags of trash have been removed from the harbor since the inception of this program. I noticed that I was out over Labor Day weekend, and I was shocked by how little debris there was floating in the water. I thought I was going to be picking up a lot more trash, especially on a busy weekend, but it just isn't there to pick up. I might have gotten 1 champagne cork and 2 Frisbees, and that was it from an entire day on the water. Oh, and here are some service statistics. I know this is a bit of an eye chart. I'm going to just call your attention to a couple of them. These are the things, these are the activities that we record on a daily basis. Hey, go out and do the anchorage checks. Hey, go out and do the die tabs. Hey, go do trash removal, public dock enforcement, whatever it is. These are all the statistics that we track down the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you see the number of stays in Marina Park. That's the top number is the number of reservations. The number right below that is the total number of stays. So for instance, in Marina Park, there were 1,428 reservations in fiscal 2021, which ended June 30th. That is a total of 4,441 nights of people staying at Marina Park. We also have statistics there for the sandline moorings, and then for offshore permittees, we've now added line items for the onshore. To give you an example, that amount, the revenue associated with that stay for the month of August, which is the most recent month that's been completed, that equates to about $70,000 in revenue. For the year, it's about $600,000 worth of revenue. And then lastly, there's statistics down there about code enforcement, new cases, closed cases, verbal warnings, warning notices issued, admin citations issued, and then lastly, MAPs, marine activity permits issued. That number is trending up, and that is a very good thing. And while that number is trending out and we are bringing more businesses into compliance with our MAP program, we are also chasing a few of them away. Okay, so in advance of this meeting, there was all sorts of publicity. Thanks, Ed, or whoever the marketing team is for Speak Up Newport. It said I was supposed to cover all of these topics, so let's see how well I did. What is the status of the current dredging project? Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't cover that, and I apologize, but I'll do it now. The dredging project. Army Corps of Engineers Project 1 took its last scoop last Saturday, and all the equipment has been rid of the harbor. It has all been dedeployed. So there is no dredging equipment anywhere in the main channel, in the entrance channel. It is all gone. It may have gone to another place in the harbor briefly, awaiting another project to begin, but essentially all of that stuff has gone to other projects. Congratulations. I know it was a challenging summer to endure Army Corps of Engineers dredging in our harbor, but believe me, every scoop mattered. Every scoop mattered, and it's a really good thing for the daily tidal, twice daily tidal flush of our harbor. Okay, so that's the status of the current dredging project. What is the status of the CAD disposal project? This is really a public works thing. It's not really the harbor department that's responsible for this. This is construction and dredging and permitting, so that's really public works. The agencies that are responsible for the next phase of dredging and the disposal that will go on associated with it have approved in concept, although they have not signed on the dotted line, they have approved in concept disposal of unsuitable materials that cannot be taken to the EPA site 3 miles out in our own harbor at a depth much greater than where it is now. And I am not a soils engineer. I am not a hydrologist. I don't know anything about this stuff. It does make sense to me to move stuff that's unsuitable at 17 feet to 43 feet and then cover it up. But if you want more details on that particular opportunity and how that's going to move forward, please come to a Public Works discussion at Speak Up Newport rather than your harbor master. That's the area that's going to be dredged in the next phase and where the materials would come from if they end up in the CAD. So I've covered that. What are the city responsibilities in patrolling the harbor? I believe I've covered that. What are the sheriff's responsibilities in patrolling the harbor? If I haven't covered that, I'll just repeat that the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department is responsible for law enforcement in the harbor. If there is a crime being committed, it's an armed, uniformed Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department person who is going to respond and fight that crime and do whatever is necessary. The City of Newport Beach Harbor Department is responsible for code enforcement. We wear polo shirts, embroidered polo shirts. We do not wear badges. We do not carry weapons. And that is the difference between us at this point. And we have a great relationship with them. So that's the sheriff's responsibilities in patrolling the harbor as opposed to the harbor department. What new regulations should harbor users be aware of? And there was a wholesale rewrite of Title 17 that was enacted in January of this year by City Council action. My favorite thing, and I'm seeing the chairman over there, I know he's going to like this too. My favorite thing that was done in all of that is that you can now pull up to an empty mooring anywhere in the harbor, tie your boat to it for a couple of hours and enjoy your picnic. So day use of vacant moorings in the harbor is now permissible according to the rewrite of Title 17. Please just call into the harbor department either by phone or VHF Channel 19 and let us know that you're there. If a patrolman goes by and sees you on a mooring, and this has happened to me before I was the harbor master and they had no idea who I was, they rolled up and said, "Hey, what you doing? Are you watching the races? Are you having a picnic? What are you doing?" And I was able to give them an excuse that sounded plausible. I was actually trying to support a sailing event that was going on, and they said, "Okay, enjoy yourself." Previously, that was not allowed. Now, day use of vacant moorings. So, and then lastly, what new city projects are planned for the harbor? Well, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of projects, all in various stages of planning and or approval. Here are the top 4 that I came up with. Dredging and RGP 54. For those of you who have residential pier permits, the RGP 54 permit that allows you to do dredging and has the associated eelgrass management plan associated with it needs to be renewed every 5 years. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. As soon as you have your current as soon as you have your current approval, you start working on the next because it takes that long, 5 full years to get approval for a 5-year permit. So RGP 54 is currently in the renewal stage, and unfortunately, of all the agencies that are responsible for providing their sign-off for that, one of them is on a different schedule. So 4 of them happily moving along, everybody's providing their approval as necessary, and we're tracking right along to the 5-year expiration of the current permit. One of those agencies, and I'll bet you can guess which one of those is off by a year. The second one, mooring amenities and policy H3, including realignment of some of the mooring fields and the extension program. So I just got invited to a meeting that's going to take place next Monday. The harbor commissioners responsible for council policy H3 are narrowing in on revisions to what amenities are going to be provided to the mooring permittees and how the mooring fields can be best utilized and how we can reestablish the program for granting extensions to some of the moorings. So that's all in the works and taking place. The third one there is rebuilt pier, a public pier at 29th Street and Lafayette. You may remember the old shock facility that was there. There has always been a dedicated public pier in that area. It is currently inaccessible. There's no gangway that leads from the upland side to the float itself. There's a float there. I wouldn't advise tying up to it. But that's all going to be rebuilt in the next, I believe, 9 months as part of another permitted project. And then lastly, amicus support and amicus support letter being contributed to the state Supreme Court in the case of, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, Hastinga and versus the city of San Diego. So a state appellate court has ruled that city municipalities no longer have the authority to exceed the speed limit in inland waterways in the state of California, aka San Diego Harbor or Newport Harbor or Oceanside Harbor, whatever harbor you want. City officials previously had this authority, much like county, state, and federal officials had. So if a lifeguard was racing to save a life in Newport Harbor, that was permissible. Currently, it is not. City lifeguards no longer have the authority to exceed the speed limit in Newport Harbor for life-saving purposes. That authority is granted only to county, state, or federal officials. So the city of Newport Beach was asked to provide an amicus letter as this thing gets appealed from the appellate court to the state Supreme Court. I contributed heavily to the letter, and this was a big thing that was just approved in closed session Tuesday night. The city is heavily in support of reestablishing the authority of city officials, lifeguards, and maybe eventually the harbor department to exceed the speed limit in the harbor when engaged in life-saving activities, much like you heard those two dramatic rescues. Had Harbor Services worker Yoder not been able to speed to that little girl, she could well have been drowned. She could have well ended up in an accident with the ferry. It's very important that this authority be reestablished for cities. So that's what's new, what new city projects are planned for the harbor. There was one question submitted online that I got ahead of time, and I'm sure Joe's standing over there ready to pelt me with other questions, but I'll just tell you the question that was submitted online. I agreed to be here and put it up, so here it is. The question was sent in with regard to moorings. Why is Newport Harbor charging 10 times the rental rate of the State Lands Commission average rate up and down the state? Here was my response. An assessment and appraisal of mooring rates in Newport Harbor is currently underway. It is being conducted by a qualified independent third party, well regarded in this capacity, qualified appraiser. The appraisal was arranged for under contract with the city. The Harbor Commission will likely see the results of the appraisal at their October or November meeting. Any idea, Mr. Chairman? It's one of the two. The appraisal will probably be made known at one of those two. From there, a recommendation from the Harbor Commission should go to the City Council early in 2022 about mooring rates here in Newport Harbor. Adjustments to the mooring rates may result once the results of that appraisal are known. I am not qualified. I am not an appraiser. I don't know what the rates are that the State Lands Commission charges elsewhere. I know what the rates are here in Newport Beach, and I know what they've been historically. I know the laws associated with them currently. So I just call your attention to the fact that the question has in it facts that have not yet been verified. Okay, other questions?
So given the interest of time, I'm going to start with Barbara Wall. She submitted a question. She joined us on Zoom. She said, I have concerns about rental electric boats and pontoon boats. What are you doing as Harbor Master to partner with these rental companies to educate boaters on the water? And then also, can you talk about the boater card that is required? And then we'll open up to questions.
Certainly. The rental operators in the city of Newport Beach operating in the harbor, whether they're renting paddle boards or electric boats or pontoon boats, all are required to have a marine activities permit from me. They're required to have a business license, and they're required to have a community development department approval for whatever their parking management plan is. The real concern, or the bigger concern, is not activity on the water, because there is actually plenty of water out there. The bigger concern is, where do your customers park? And so the focus for those operators is really on their parking management plan and where they're going to put the cars for their customers. Related to the boating card, I am not a state official. I did not write this rule. I think it is a stupid rule, and I disagree with it wholeheartedly. But you and I, who are regular boaters in the city of Newport Beach and boat regularly, have to have a California boating card. It's sort of like a driver's license, but not really. Somebody coming in and renting a paddleboard or an electric boat or a pontoon boat for a day does not have to have that card. The rental companies were specifically exempt from this, and it was to promote commerce, and I understand that, but some required education is strongly recommended for those who are novices to boating on Newport Harbor. We do all we can as part of the marine activity permitting process to educate the operators, provide them materials, and suggest that they provide that materials to their customers. But let's be honest, their interest is getting their customer out on the water and not bogging them down in the process. This is a battle we fight daily. Oh, come on, Mr. Ingold. I'm sure you have a burning question. We're old friends. Ms. Conselman. So the question is, are there additional repercussions for repeat offenders of any of the municipal code? And the answer is yes. We have an escalating scale of fines and financial penalties associated with notice of violations that we, the Harbor Department, issue with our administrative citations for violations of the municipal code. Typically, the first step is a warning. Hey, don't do that. Slow down. Second is the issuance of a notice of violation, and this may or may not be for speeding. The third instance is notice of violation plus a $100 fine, then a $200 fine, then a $500 fine, and then a $1,000 fine. So yes, escalating scale of fines associated with repeat offenders. And there are very few of them. So the question is, what happens? There are certainly people out there to whom a $1,000 fine means nothing, and they would just as soon continue to scoff at the law and not comply. What are the repercussions for them? And there are a couple of instances where this is actually happening or about to happen, and we refer that to the City Attorney's Office for civil penalty and civil proceedings. That's really beyond our scope, but the City Attorney's Office has been incredibly supportive and incredibly cooperative and incredibly interested in learning more about operations on the harbor, and I think we will see some more of that. So the question is, what is my role as the harbor master as it relates to the harbor commission? I was a harbor commissioner. It's true. It's not a secret. What is my relation to them? And where does the harbor master, the paid employee of the city of Newport Beach, fit in terms of authority, et cetera? Well, the first is I'd like to thank and acknowledge all my harbor commission former colleagues because they are an absolutely amazing bunch of people. And I enjoy having a cocktail with them as much as I enjoy debating the structure of Title 17. It's just an incredible experience to be with each and every one of them, and especially all of them as a group. I frequently get calls from them asking for this, that, or the other, and to the degree that I am able to provide that resource as quickly as I can, I do. My real responsibility is to report to the city manager, and she is my boss, and I do what she says. The harbor commissioners should follow protocol and request things of the city manager's office that relate to the harbor. It can actually be much more efficient if they just ask me, and that's fine. When the task is small enough and I can respond quickly enough, I do. If the task is going to be a big one, I have to get authority from the city manager. My pleasure. Great questions. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, how are the administrative fines and administrative citations handled for bridge jumpers? And the answer is, it is handled very much the same way as a speeder or anybody else violating the municipal code. If we catch somebody, well, our first response is, hey, kids, you're standing up there on the edge of the bridge, don't jump, really. It's not going to be a good idea. It's not going to work out well. Please, don't jump. And, 80% of them comply, and off they go. 10% of them come back as soon as they see us leave, and then 10% of them go ahead and jump anyway. If they go ahead and jump and we can apprehend them, we will write them an administrative citation with a financial penalty. The lowest level financial penalty is $100. If it's an adult, we write the administrative citation to the adult. If it's a juvenile, we write it to their parent. Of the 15 that we've written, 1 went to an adult and 14 went to their parents. We have not written a second administrative citation to any one individual or their parent. So we've gotten very good compliance. But the procedure is exactly the same. If we catch the same person jumping off the bridge twice, it's a $200 fine the second time.
Well, thanks again, Paul, for taking time out of your schedule. I know you had a busy day today with the Finance Committee before this, so we really appreciate it. We're going to have another program next month. The announcement on the subject is going to come out probably Monday, so watch for that. Also, we are going to have a mayor's dinner in 2022, so it's going to be February the 10th, COVID allowing. So we're going to go ahead with that. Well, we had a great summer reception that went off really well, so looking forward to getting back to the mayor's dinners, though. So be watching out for the announcements on that. And with that, I wish you a good evening, and thanks for coming.